This week, we're going to tackle a subject that is interesting because it is something that affects everyone. And that's really what this is about is, understanding stress. And it seems like these days everyone is stressed out. In fact, if your job is anything like mine, this is what it looks like on a daily basis. From the phone to the tablet, needing to sign something, need to review something, need to approve something, having somebody in your office, you just basically want everyone to go away. But unfortunately, we're living in a world right now where, somebody sends you a text, and if you haven't responded in about 3 seconds, there must be something wrong with you, or there's some types of issues, and it doesn't matter what time that text comes in. We constantly live on our computers and our smartphones that make us dumber, which is kind of an oxymoron, as well as a lot of other things that we do to basically increase the amount of pressure that we have on ourselves. In fact, time is the number one excuse used why we don't do everything. From eating breakfast to working out to taking care of our health to going to the doctor to you name it, time is the number one stressor for most people. So when you're thinking about stress, I wanted to give everyone an opportunity to kind of see a scale or a chart, if you will. Where 0 to 10, everyone understands a scale from 0 to 10 with regard to their stress level. 0 is no pain. The world's great. I love life. No issues whatsoever. To 10 being as bad as it could be, nothing else matters. That's all I can think about is the stress in my life. And this is kind of the stress scale, if you will. Most people these days are literally falling in the 6, 7, 8 range when it comes to stress. It's hard to ignore, avoid unusual activities, or avoid usual activities, I'm sorry. Focus of attention prevents doing daily activities, and awful hard to do anything. Literally, most Americans are living in that 6, 7, and 8 range, as you're going to see. If you happen to live in one of these 10 cities, then congratulations. You're living in one of the least stressed cities in America, Boulder, Colorado being number one. Mainly because the only thing that you have in Boulder, Colorado, other than, the corner grocery store or something like that, is a lot of mountains, a lot of nature, and a lot of people who know one another and can rely on each other when something goes wrong. All the way down to Fargo, North Dakota. Yes, there's movies about it. Yes, it gets negative 35 degrees, but guess what? Most people there are very happy. And if you'll notice a commonality amongst most of these cities that have the least stress, they are not the major cities of the U.S. They are in the outskirts. They are in what we would call the sticks, the woods, the hills, you name it. They are out in the middle of nowhere, and those towns exist because there are people in them that want that slower lifestyle. You have somebody that goes to the city and they get behind somebody driving, and yes, they're going 30 and a 30, and you're getting upset and you're trying to pass them on the 2-lane road, and you're honking your horn, and they're just looking at you like you've lost your mind. And the reason is because you've lost your mind. We have gotten into a phase now where we believe that we must do things faster. We must do things yesterday that we can't get done today. It's gotten to a point now where we have to just slow down because it is having an adverse effect on our health. In fact, the impact of stress on health or health risk has become pretty severe. There basically are 3 different types of stress. And all carry, different mental health risks. The first stress would be your routine stressors. That's work, family, and other daily responsibilities. Those are the things that every day we stress about or worry about. The other type of stress is brought on by a sudden negative change, such as losing job, divorce, illness, death of a loved one, something like that. That's kind of the things that happen there. And then, of course, you have your traumatic stresses. That's a major accident, a war, assault, or a natural disaster. Those are the 3 main types. And the one that we really want to focus on today is really the routine stressors. Some of these other stressors, it's hard for us to control. In fact, most of those are completely out of our control. Other than, the divorce one. I mean, I guess you could make the decision for a divorce, or your spouse may make the decision and it wasn't yours. But everything else isn't your choice. It's something that's going to happen to you. But the routine stressors is something that we can focus on. Now, what effect is this actually having? Well, 25% of Americans say that stress has a strong impact on their physical health. In other words, they recognize that their health is being affected by the stress in their life, either, positively or adversely, depending on whether or not you have a high or low stress life. 43% of adults suffer adverse health effects from the stress, and 28% of Americans say that the stress has a strong impact on their mental health. It is truly affecting their ability to function. One in five Americans, though, say that they have either considered skipping or have skipped going to the doctor in the past year when they needed health care because of financial concerns. That's a whole nother topic and that's a whole nother issue, but just so you know, most people these days, they believe that they have health insurance, and the reality is they don't. What they have is a high deductible health care plan. What we refer to those as catastrophic care plans. And in fact, the average American right now has a deductible of a little over $4,300, which means you have to pay $4,300 out of your pocket before you actually have insurance protection of any type, and then it's usually split on an 80-20 basis. So, what stress does to your body? Well, with the brain and nerves, it can cause headaches, feelings of despair, lack of energy, sadness, nervousness, anger, irritability, increased or decreased eating. You know, you name it. Skin, oh yeah, it has all kinds of breakouts, especially acne-related issues associated with stress. So if you have acne breakouts, especially if you're an adult and you haven't had them in years, just know your body's telling you, hey, we're a little stressed out. You might want to find a way to de-stress us a little. Muscles and joints. Yeah, you can actually have muscles aches, tensions, especially in the neck and shoulder and the back area, as well as bone density related issues associated with stress. Heart, no doubt there. You have a raised heart rate, raised blood pressure, increased risk of high cholesterol, and of course, increased risk of heart attack and stroke as a result of stress in your life. Stomach issues, this is one of the number one areas that affects most people with regard to nausea, stomach pain, heartburn, weight gain, irritability. A lot of people think that they have gastrointestinal related issues associated with stress. The pancreas, you actually have an increased risk of diabetes if you live in a high stressed life. The intestines, again, the diarrhea, the constipation, and other digestive problems. And of course, your reproduction is affected. Women have irregular or more painful periods and a reduced sexual desire, and men can actually result in impotence, lower sperm production, and reduced sexual desire as well. And of course, our immune system is lowered as well. So if you think stress isn't affecting your life, just look at the common effects stress has all the way up and down our systems. I mean, it can affect everything from the acne that you've gotten all of a sudden to the way that you can focus to get things done, the headaches that you're suffering from, all the way down to the relationship that you have with your partner because your desire just simply isn't there. Stress is affecting us every single day of our lives. In fact, where we're dealing with it right now in the three main areas is undiagnosed stress is causing 60% of all illness and disease. Let's let that set in for a second. Undiagnosed stress, in other words, stress in your life that you think, I don't want to talk to my doctor about because I'm embarrassed by it, or I don't think it's relevant, or I don't think they need to know, or this is something I can just deal with myself, I don't need help. 60% of all illness and disease is caused by that undiagnosed stress. In fact, 3 out of 4 doctor visits are due to stress. So, as a result of you going to visit your doctor related to an autoimmune issue, an allergy-related issue, uncontrollable headaches, etc., while the doctor is trying to figure out based upon what you're telling them is going on, you're not talking to them about the stress-related issues in your life, because if you were, then we would be able to get to the root of the problem. And then, of course, stress is costing organizations and businesses over $300 billion a year in lost productivity and medical costs. And of course, that was put out by Stress in America report, the APA, in 2015. So, American stress, let's talk about this. In the U.S., job stress was the number one cause of stress. There's a big surprise. What's interesting is if you look at work today versus the work just 25 years ago, what people are expected to do and what they're expected to accomplish in a normal day has changed dramatically. I mean, if you're, in your mid 40s or older, you can remember a time when you went to work, and when you left the office at work. It was one of those situations where the office was there because you didn't have a cell phone. You didn't have the email systems that you were constantly in contact with. I mean, most people didn't even have a laptop that they took home with them. When the job was a job and home was home, and our stress in our lives was a lot less. But now, I mean, we're at our jobs 24/7, 365. We're tethered by the smartphone. We're tethered by computers. Wi-Fi has to be everywhere. If Wi-Fi goes down, it's the end of the world. And now they're even making commercials about it. But around a fifth of people who have anxiety fear unemployment. So that's what you need to know. About 20% of people, their biggest stress at work is the fact of or fear that they're going to be unemployed. The causes of job stress are either job pressure, tension with coworkers, pressure from boss, work overload, and of course money, the loss or reduced retirement funds, etc., associated with those things. 2 in 5 people employed experience anxiety about their work on a regular basis. 41% say they felt intense or stressed out during the work day that were interviewed, and 76% of people cite money and work as leading causes of stress. Usually those go hand in hand. So let's talk about workplace stress. This is the infamous multitasker. This is the person that has to do everything all at once so that everyone stays happy. At ID Life, we have, an unbelievable person. I told her I was going to make her the focus of today's presentation. She's the president of the company, Laura Brandt. She is the world's worst multitasker. I mean, absolutely the world's worst, but she is the world's best at getting stuff done. There's been tons of studies out there that multitasking actually equates to, a non-productive workforce. And then, in fact, if you want to actually accomplish things, you need to focus on one thing, get it done, then move on to the next. That's the most, successful way of getting things done. And Laura is the absolute best at that. I mean, she can literally block out the entire world and focus on that one thing that needs to get done, and then move to the next one and get that one done, and then move on to the next one. Unlike most of us, like me, that have papers all over my desk with things about 80% done and waiting on, trying to get to the next one. In fact, that's probably why I have so many squirrels in my office, is because my ADHD kicks in and I get distracted. But Laura is our champion here at ID Life, and she makes sure everything works. So, from a workplace stress standpoint, she's not the contributor. That's probably more me. But let's jump into these. Does this sound familiar to you? It's gotten to the point where I'm working here to pay for the prescriptions I now require to cope with working here. Have you ever noticed that a lot of people will choose a profession or stay in a profession that completely is ruining their health for the pure benefit of having benefits? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that I'm staying at this job I hate, that I regret going to, that every Sunday night I'm posting about my fear of going back or my dread of going back, because without it, I wouldn't have my health benefits, and my health benefits are being used because I'm so stressed out at work that it's causing the health problems and cost and expenses of me having to actually use the benefits in the first place. This is a common occurrence, and it's one of those things that happens all the time. In fact, if you look at the stats, in 2011, 2012, an estimated 428,000 people suffered from work-related stress. And I actually think that number is quite low for 2018, but that was the latest stats that we had. On average, work stress-related sufferers took 24 days off. So that's 428,000 people took 24 days off of work. Okay, so these are the people that are really affected by it, but 24 days off on average of that 428,000 people as a result of stress. And then, of course, that means that we lost roughly 10.4 working days. Now, see, what's interesting in this country is the amount of work isn't going away, but the amount of people it takes to do the work is going up. So businesses are being adversely affected in two ways. One, absenteeism. People aren't there because they're just so stressed out they need to take a stress day. It's not a sick day. It's not a personal day. It's a stress day. They just don't want to do it. So they leave and they go do their thing. But the reality is it's costing the U.S. economy about $300 billion a year. In fact, 56% of people say telling their manager about a mental health issue would inhibit their career prospects. So what you have is more than half the people that are feeling stressed, that aren't liking what's going on, that do have issues related to the job or what's happening at their job, will not tell their managers about it because they fear that it's going to inhibit their career prospects at that employer. But the biggest contributors to workplace stress are right here. The increased workload is 21%. Not feeling valued is 20%. That's right, managers actually tell people what you think and how you care. Worrying about money or the lack of a salary increase is about 19%. Not enough support from the managers, 18%, job security, 16%, and uncertainty and change with the organization, 16%. So these are kind of the common factors. But an interesting study was done with regard to IT administrators. So these are the people that are running the systems. We live in a computer age world. That's just where we are now. So they deal with people that all of a sudden the computer doesn't work. Their system's down. The internet went down. Their website has a problem. You name it. When something goes wrong in technology, IT administrators are where it hits. And unfortunately, we've gotten into a society now where people believe that these things are supposed to just work 24/7, 365. And if it doesn't, then they must have done something wrong. They don't understand that technology sometimes just doesn't act right. Sometimes it is a teenager. Sometimes it just doesn't, work. And sometimes it breaks. But when they did the survey, what they found is of these IT administrators, almost 70% of them felt stress at work. The biggest source of their stress, management. Usually that's unrealistic expectations. Tight deadlines was coming in as a second place in that study. The users that they support are 17.7. In other words, people yelling at them because something's not working. Not enough staff is a common issue. Not enough budget. In other words, they want platinum service for bronze income or bronze budgeting, and then of course others were things. But what happened to them though, when you actually looked at when they were asked, okay, so how is the stress affecting you? That's where the numbers really got scary, because what they talked about was they were losing sleep. We know that sleep or lack of sleep is now probably the number one cause of disease in this country. But yet almost 42% of them reported losing sleep as a result of the stress associated with their job. Missed out on social functions was almost 40%. This is the camaraderie. These are the de-stressors in our life. These are the things that we do to basically let the job go. Well, 40% of people reported having to miss things like that. Of course, missed time with kids was 39%. Now we're getting into the marriage-related issues. The job is actually causing marital-related problems because of those things. Then we're going to start canceling commitments, 35%. Well, now all of a sudden we're affecting our relationships, our friendships, our family relationships. I mean, these are adverse. And of course, they don't feel great physically. In other words, it's affecting their health, was 22%. Health issues, almost 20%. It hasn't at all, was only 16%. And ended a relationship, 15%. That's right. So stress, the IT administrator's stress, actually was contributing to 15% of the relationship breakups. And then, of course, you can see all the other numbers down there. But how much stress do you think your job gives you compared to others in the social circle? Well, it's pretty high, because if you look at I am the most stressed, 22%, the same 50%. About 72% think it's the same or more. It's a high number, but it's one of those things where pick your job and you're going to get to the same numbers here. One of the other biggest stressors out there right now for employees at their job is financial stress. But this isn't just employees. This is related to marital relationships. This is personal relationships. This is personal stress. This is, family stress. But financial stress is a huge stressor in America right now. In fact, if you actually looked at the numbers, 25% of people are stressing that they don't have a sufficient emergency savings for unexpected expenses. In fact, I think the last number I saw was that 80% of people could not have a $500 event hit their budget without it becoming a financial disaster for them on a monthly basis. In other words, if the washer and dryer broke down and all of a sudden, you had to get a new one, that would be a financial disaster for 80% of Americans. Not being able to meet the monthly expenses is 20% of Americans. 20% of people are struggling with not having enough month to pay the expenses, if you know what I'm talking about. 18% not being able to retire when they want to. They've realized that they just don't have enough savings, that they're just going to have to keep working beyond the retirement age because they financially can't help it. Keeping up with debt, 13% of people are stressed about that all the time. And of course, 11% of people are stressed because, they gotten laid off. But that's kind of what the numbers are. But here's 5 signs that employees are starting to suffer with financial stress. And of course, today, if you look at the numbers up top, 82% of employees say they have financial stress. So if you want to know whether or not the financial component is a big deal for people or not, 82% of employees, or that means 82% of Americans, in essence, have financial stress. That's people that are dealing with month-to-month living, and they are looking for opportunities to reduce their stress, and especially in the financial component. But first, the first sign is withdrawing loans against retirement savings. Okay, so 62% of HR professionals say that employees were more likely to request retirement loans in 2013 compared with previous years. That's 5 years ago. That number is now over 70% of people that are retiring with less money because they had to withdraw against that to live at the lifestyle they're currently living at. Number 2, asking for payday advances. This is a second sign of financial stress or financial related issues. In fact, if you actually look at the numbers, employees who need short-term cash have limited options. Finance charges on a typical payday loan equate to 400%. That's right. When you see all these payday loan facilities, especially where they're located, which is to me absolutely abysmal, and I'm glad, at least in Texas, we're doing some really good things here to try to get rid of some of these things because they are just predatory lending. But the actual finance charges is almost 400%, which is well beyond usury, as you can see. Unexpected absences is the third sign. 37% say that employees at their organization miss work due to a financial emergency. That's right. This isn't a sickness. This isn't a health-related issue. It's a financial issue that they're having to deal with so that they're missing work. So they're missing the thing that pays them so that they can deal with the inability to pay somebody else. It's one of the signs. Preventable medical issues. People don't take care of their health. So as a result, 43%, didn't go to the doctor for some reason or some issue, mainly because they can't even afford to go because their health insurance isn't real insurance. It's catastrophic care, which we talked about. But that's preventable. And then, of course, the fifth one, spending time dealing with personal finances while at work. 37% of employees in America are dealing with that on a regular basis, dealing with their personal financial issues and their lack of finances, which is causing severe stress and lack of productivity. So let's look at this one. This is a picture of a brain. You have the love lobe. My goodness, that's taken over. The rebellion center, the ego, the personality function. My personal favorite is the love for parents and hate for parents. Oh, maybe I should mention what we're looking at is the teenage stress model. Yes, this is the typical teenage brain. And my favorite of all of these is in the very bottom right-hand corner. Memory for chores and homework is the smallest portion of the brain, as well as the communication skills that comes in a very close second. And then, of course, balance and coordination levels are probably third least. But the reality is, teenagers are stressed out more these days than anything. And as parents, as caregivers, as people that are looking out for these folks, we need to understand where those stresses are coming from because some of them are self-inflicted. Others are the same ones we went through as kids, though, hey, we're the parents, we're the caregivers. What do we know? These kids know everything. But what you do need to know is where this is coming from, especially when you're dealing with girls. So I'm one that has a son that's 20 and a daughter that's 18, and watching them go through their teenage years, man, you're talking about they were polar opposites. My son is the fun-loving, blue personality, everything's great in the world. My daughter is the green personality, has a list for a list and stresses about everything. And this could not be more true, especially the top one. Their appearance is a significant source of stress. Boys, 55%. High number, actually, but 68% of girls stress on a regular basis about how they look. This has a lot to do with a lot of different things, and that's not a topic that I necessarily want to tackle, but you need to know that this is something that, if you have a teenage girl in your house, that's something that she is concerned about on a regular basis. Report feeling irritable or angry in the past month. 45% of girls and 36% of boys. We're going to talk about anger here in a little bit. Feel bad when comparing themselves to others on social media. 30% of girls, 13% of boys. This is a new phenomenon. You literally have cyberbullying now that you're having to deal with. You have social media as a status symbol. These are not things as parents these days had to deal with. This is a brand new thing, where your social status is not determined upon your interpersonal relationships face to face. No, it's based upon your social media status and all the friends that you have. I've always said if you really want to gauge how many friends you have, call up some of those Facebook people at 3 o'clock in the morning with a flat tire and see how many people actually show up. They're not friends, they're connections. But it's Facebook's great marketing that call them friends, and that's why people think that they have all these friends. How others perceive them on social media is a significant source of stress. Yes, that's right. People's perception or what people think is a high stress level. And then, of course, say they feel pressure to be a certain way. That's 34% of girls and 22% of boys. And I would normally say that 34% of girls say they feel pressure to be a certain way by the boys that they care about. And you know what I'm referring to. But it's a reality that our teenagers are dealing with stress in different ways as a result of just being kids. But now there's either different pressures because of the advent of social media and the social presence. So the stress levels of teens is now one of the very first times actually hitting the same stress level as adults, and in fact, in some respects, it's even higher. In the past month, it's just one of those things. Little or no stress versus great deal of stress. Teenagers are stressed out. It is just one of those bad things that you need to be aware of. In fact, if you actually look at it, 34% of teens predict their stress to increase in the next year. These are teenagers. They shouldn't have cares in the world. They're developing, they're growing, they're starting to learn who they are. But yet 34% of them say, I'm going to be more stressed out next year than I was this. I mean, there's all kinds of issues as to why. And then, of course, teens are reporting experience of stress much like adults. These are the percentages. Been irritable or angry, 41% versus 40. Felt nervous or anxious, felt tired or fatigued, felt as though they could cry. Notice the teen numbers for felt like they could cry is actually higher than adults. And then, of course, stress-induced behavior over the past month, 34% lying awake at night, or 35% lying awake at night, 26% overeating. Remember, we have a childhood obesity issue in this country now. 33% of our children are overweight. Stress is a big contributor to that. And then, of course, we have the reverse of that, which is 23% have actually skipped a meal. We're starting to have eating disorders and things associated with stress because they're worried about whether or not somebody likes them or likes the post or the selfie or one of the other things that they just posted on social media. Let's talk about social media because here's the real numbers. I worry about negative effects of social media on my physical and mental health. The maturers, or what I would call our senior citizens of the world, 15%. 85% of people could care less. Baby boomers, believe it or not, 78% of them actually care. Or don't care. 22% do care. 22% of baby boomers really do care about what people think. The Gen Xers, my generation, 37% care what somebody thinks on social media. And think that it's actually going to affect their physical and mental health. So again, that's a high number. It's more than I expected. But the one that you need to understand is millennials and teenagers today. It's roughly about 50%. So if you're dealing with a child, you can't just be dismissive about this issue. You can't just say, hey, why are you stressed out about? Why do you care what people think? It doesn't matter. That's what you believe because you're a Gen X or you're a boomer. And that's just your belief system. But the reality is you need to understand where they're coming from so that you can communicate with them and give them the help and support that they need because this is a reality. This is who they are. This is the new social presence, if you will, that social media is a big stressor for these folks. And you can't just be dismissive about it. You need to be understanding and educate yourself. And that's what these Lunch and Learns are all about, is to give you that knowledge base. So how do we unstress? How do we get back to this carefree lifestyle? How do we get back to just wanting to play in a sprinkler and being happy about it and not caring about the cell phone or the text message or work or anything else? How do you do that? Well, there's some ways. One is just to slow down. Simple. Put the phone on the off I know most people never turn their phone off. In fact, the average American is away from their phone usually for about 15 minutes a day. Usually that's when they're in the shower. Some people don't even get that. They leave it close enough to the shower so that they can check it in case it goes off, as crazy as that is. But the reality is we need to just slow down life a little bit. Try to stay calm. Do your best. Be positive if you can. Take it easy. Breathe. There's a new app on Apple Watches now that remind people to just take a breath every hour. It's amazing that they have to have apps that remind us to breathe, but the reality is so many of us are just go, go, go. We forget to just slow down. Find something that is fun and just do it. Whether or not that's a sporting activity, if it's a dog, if it's, dinner with a family member, whatever it is, plan it into your schedule so that you can't say you don't have time, and keep to it. Go have fun. Do something. Enjoy life. Unplug. Relax. Go outside. I mean, that's the big one. The average American is spending less than 4 minutes outside now because we do so many things inside. We need to get back out to nature and actually understand how to de-stress our lives. And, of course, you can meditate. No, guys, this isn't hocus pocus type stuff. Actually, stop. Take some breaths. Understand who you are. Unclutter the mind and move on. I mean, these are simplistic, but the reality is we're each created a little bit differently. We need to find out what helps us de-stress, and it may be exercise, it may be hanging out with friends, it may be whatever, but some people then also focus on, non-productive habits to de-stress, like drugs, alcohol, and other things. Just understand that your stress levels, what they are, where they're coming from, what the motivators are, and if you need to change a job, change a behavior, change a friend, whatever you need to do, get to the point in life where you're basically doing things to take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of everything else later. What you're going to find is you're going to be more happy, and of course you're going to be a lot less stressed. Okay, so now, public service announcement. This is definitely a pot calling the kettle black moment. So yes, I'm having to teach something in Lunch and Learns that I personally struggle with. I do this from time to time, as you will probably know if you've ever spoken to my wife or children. And this is definitely one of those, but this is a public service announcement. Anger. We're talking about stress, so, we wouldn't be talking about stress if we didn't talk about anger. And I looked at the definition, and I thought it was kind of interesting that the definition is absolutely and irrevocably just flat out wrong. You're going to see why. Anger, a strong feeling of annoyance, displeasure, or hostility, that's the noun, or verb. Fill someone with anger, provoke anger in. You're going to provoke anger. What we need to understand about anger is this. No one has the power to make you angry. You make a conscious choice to be angry. Yes, somebody can be annoying. Yes, somebody could do something that you don't like. But you make the conscious decision to actually get angry about it. You could walk away. You could ignore the person. You could not deal with the person anymore. You could do whatever you chose to do. But if you do get angry, if you actually act out, if you do have that irritability in your gut, and you just you're flaming, I mean, you're just ready to fight, understand that that anger response is actually a secondary response. I want you to understand this now. What I mean by secondary response is the first is a choice. Your first choice or your primary response to that incident or that issue or that thing that came up is a choice as to whether or not to just walk away from it, to react to it in a calm manner, to act with it with anger, to act with it with a fist, whatever the case may be. You are making a primary choice of how you're going to respond. The secondary response is anger. So just so you know, just as a public service announcement, if you were one of those types, like, hey, I'm one of the world's worst, I have a temper, yes, like most, but you need to understand that if you are in fact acting that way, that is a choice that you are making, and that is a choice that you can change. So don't use that I have a temper as your excuse. You have a temper because you're choosing to have a temper. You have a choice to change that if you want to. So PSA, hopefully my wife is not watching. At ID Life, we, want to help people live a healthier lifestyle. We are trying to teach that diet and lifestyle choices contribute to nutritional gaps. But when we fill those nutritional gaps with the right food and supplementation and other things based upon the diet and lifestyle choices that we're making, then we can actually have that healthy lifestyle that we're looking for. And that's what we're here about. And that's what these Lunch and Learns are all about, is to teach you things that you may not have known otherwise, that can give you the information you need to support yourself, support the people that you care about, people that you love, so that they can make better choices, so that we can have a better world, and more importantly, have a healthier world.